Today, I have 10 must-add players that are going to help you pull out a win this weekend in your fantasy baseball playoff matchup on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, riding solo tonight. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel, and it will give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly to Matt and I, join us on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And guys, this time of year, it's very important to get that little extra edge against your playoff opponent in your matchups. And through Subtext, like I said, it's literally a text messaging alert right to your phone every time Matt and I get back to you. And it's just so beneficial to have that extra upper hand against your opponent this time of year. So give us a chance on Subtext. If you're interested, it's available, and the link is available in our bio wherever you're listening or watching, and it's available on any of our social media platforms. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code all lowercase LockedOnMLB to win 50 instantly when you play 5. And all right, guys, like I said, crucial weekend coming up here. Don't be afraid to make the moves that you need to make to win. If you got to stream that extra starting pitcher, go for it. If you need that extra bat that you think is going to put you over the edge, go for it. And like I said, join us on Subtext if you have those specific burning questions, because Matt and I have definitely got the answers for you. But let's start off with our first must-add player of today's episode. We're going to Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter, one of the most, if we had to count up how many times guys have been on the must-add, episode, I think Kerry Carpenter's up there. He's up to 55% owned, just a little bit higher than the 50% threshold we normally try and stay under. But I think this time of year, you just got, if he's out there, Kerry Carpenter, he's been performing great, just came back from, a little bit of an injury, not too long ago. It was around like August 13th, but he came back, hit 2 home runs right away. And it just really hasn't missed that much of a beat, and then if you even look at recently, September 8th, Kerry Carpenter went 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. And once again, Kerry Carpenter's playing for those Detroit Tigers. He also went 4 for 4 on September 11th against the Rockies with a run and RBI. On the year, Kerry Carpenter, 73 games played. As I mentioned, dealt with a few injuries this year. 293 batting average, 33 runs, 14 homers, and 49 RBIs. Just like I said, just has become a really solid player. Kerry Carpenter has. Age 27, he's in this prime of his career. Kerry Carpenter, somebody I think I'm going to take a lot of him next year. I really think I'm going to take the risk on him because he's been nothing but successful since he's come up to the majors. That's 3 seasons ago, got a little cup of coffee. And then, last year and this year, Kerry Carpenter has fully come into his own, has really shown off the power. He, even has, a little bit of speed in his game. We actually haven't seen it this year, but last year, Kerry Carpenter did steal 6 bags. It's a part of his game. He's a little bit above average when it comes to sprint speed, but when it comes to hitting the ball hard, this man does it very, very well. The underlying stuff believes in Kerry Carpenter. I believe in Kerry Carpenter, and you should believe in Kerry Carpenter. And if Mr. Carpenter is out there on your waiver wire, I think you need to add him. I'm a huge fan. As I mentioned, I'll probably have him as a top 35-ish outfielder next year. We'll make a great number 3 outfielder in most leagues next season. If you can get him as a utility bench player, you're going to be doing even better. I really believe in all the underlying stuff. I think he's going to be a great power hitter. I think he's going to hit for a bit of average. And honestly, if Kerry Carpenter didn't play in Detroit, which is, a very tough hitter's park, I think that power could even flourish even more. I think he's going to stay there, though. I think he's going to be a cog in the middle of that lineup for, at least the next couple, 2-3 years, Kerry Carpenter. So must-add player. Really think he could put you over the edge this and next week if you make it that far. Let's move on. Got another outfielder for you guys. Let's talk a little bit of Victor Robles. Former, I think he was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he was the number 1 overall prospect at one point in time. And that's going back quite a few years at this point. But Victor Robles has moved on. He's with the Seattle Mariners now, and I think they have tapped into that talent because on the season, 77 games played for Victor Robles, a 290 batting average with 31 runs, 4 homers, 21 RBIs, and 24 steals. I think I mentioned it, but I'm going to say it again, 22% owned on Yahoo for Victor Robles. The thing with Victor Robles is he's always had the upside, always had the potential, just never really lived up to it. Another guy that has dealt with plenty of injuries in his career, lack of playing time. I don't know what the Nationals were doing with him, but it really wasn't working. He's actually up the, it's only 27 years old. He's a guy that you think, if you've been around for a while in the fantasy community or just baseball community, probably a little bit older, probably a little bit younger than we thought. So, you know what? Even last year, though, Victor Robles did hit 299 across 36 games for the Nationals. So maybe he's tapping into something as well. The speed's legit. Kid's always been super fast. He can definitely steal you a bunch of bases. He got 24 in those 77 games. And I think down the stretch, you know what? Seattle's got a decent lineup. So, you know what? If he's hitting leadoff, which he has, he's going to get driven in a bunch. The batting average is been legit the last 100 games or so. So I don't know if I'm buying into a 300 batting average, but I think he could do it the rest of the way. I think he can steal a bunch of bases. Victor Robles, go out there and add him. 22% owned on Yahoo. Seattle Mariners. Let's move on to somebody who was an end of the year darling last year, and it looks like he's starting to do it again. It's Zach Gelof of those Oakland Athletics. Gelof was somebody that, maybe Matt more so than myself, but, I was excited to draft him. I know Matt was very excited to draft him. I'll tell you this, when draft season started to come around, I started to temper back expectations because I was looking at the underlying stuff, minor league stuff, and he was never really a batting average guy. So if he was going to be in a bad Oakland lineup where I didn't think the runs and the RBIs were going to be good, which they aren't, and the batting average is going to take a hit, he's just going to be semi-decent power and semi-decent speed, and that's kind of what we've seen on the year from Gelof with the 211 batting average, the 56 runs, 45 RBIs, 17 homers, and 23 steals in 122 games. Numbers really aren't sexy for Gelof. Maybe if he was on a better team. But you know what? He's been producing of late, and honestly, that's all we need for the rest of this year. He's been hitting 260 with 6 runs, a homer, 3 RBIs, and 4 steals over the last 2 weeks. He's 39% owned on Yahoo. Really going to help you at second base. If you lost Altuve, I'm not sure how long he's going to be out for. It might be, a little bit. If it looks like it's an oblique issue, and those can be tricky to manage, especially with not much time left in the season. So Gelof, 39% owned. He's up 4% over the last couple of days here. I think we can add him. I think he's a very safe ad. I think we know who he is. A little, not really too much batting average, maybe a little bit, but the power and speed is legit. So you can at least bank on him for that. And honestly, on September 10th, he went 2 for 5 with 2 runs, a homer, and a steal. Stole a base in 3 games, actually, from September 7th through the 10th. So Gelof looks like he's heating up at the right time. So I think we can add him, and feel pretty good about it. But you know what the funny thing is, guys? Since Matt is not here today, I actually have a couple of Matts coming up next, and we will do starting pitchers as well. So stay locked on because, as I mentioned, those names and more are coming up next. And all right, guys, I'm talking to you about my friends at Tonal. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger powered by AI. Tonal learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movement and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized programs and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the mom of 3, Tonal is trusted by thousands who have become their strongest version of themselves. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your first purchase with Tonal. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, Matt and I are introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, Diamond Club, on the Subtext platform, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As the season wraps up, you can rely on Matt and I for our dynamic content, get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where the path to your victories begin. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. And all right, guys, let's just jump back into it. Let's keep it pushing. I mentioned, hey, you know what? Matt's not here today. I had to supplement it somehow. Got a couple of Matts to talk about, and the first one is Matt Walner. Matt Walner, I feel like he's been, in and out of our, fantasy baseball, rosters for the past couple of seasons. When he's healthy and going, pick him up. When he slows down, we drop him. Once again, Walner plays for those Minnesota Twins. In case you forgot or not familiar, he's 17% owned on Yahoo. Numbers on the year are actually solid. He's played 64 games. He's got a 261 batting average, 25 runs, 13 homers, 34 RBIs, and 3 steals. Walner, when he hits home runs, he hits them in bunches. Last 2 games, he's got a home run in each, especially on September 10th. He went 2 for 5 with a home run and 3 RBIs, and he also homered on September 5th. So, as I mentioned, when Walner hits them, they come in bunches. It looks like he's going to be on one of those stretch now. He's very lowly owned. Honestly, he's probably behind the, couple of outfielders we talked about at the top of the episode. So temper my expectations with him. The underlying stuff, though, for Walner, at 26 years old, is there another level? I'm not really sure, but he hits the ball really hard. The underlying stuff, likes what he does. Could he potentially be a Max Muncy-ish type where, the power's good, batting average is kind of low? I see it. Is there a season where I get a 250 with 30 home runs? I think it's in the cards for Walner. Somebody, I think we'll be drafting him next year, deeper leagues, 5 outfield leagues, stuff like that. There's upside here, and especially for, the end of the season here, final stretch, Walner's been hot of late, as I mentioned. He's been moving in that Twins lineup anywhere between 2nd and 5th, since September 4th. I really like that for him. I think, like I said, the home runs are going to come. The RBIs are going to be there. Even the runs could be there, the way he's moving around the lineup. His sprint speed, round average. It's more of a will, or if it's the opportunity to do it, that's where those 3 steals come from. I'm not going to be banking on Walner for any speed. Whatever he gives you is just kind of a bonus there. So Matt Walner, Minnesota Twins, 17% owned on Yahoo. Pick him up if you definitely need a little bit of a power boost. From one Matt to the next, let's talk about Matt Vierling. Matt Vierling is somebody that, I was never really too big on Mr. Vierling, but you know what? He's out there. He's producing 129 games played on the year for Vierling, 72 runs, 16 homers, 54 RBIs, 5 steals, 26% owned on Yahoo. Doesn't really play every single day. But you know what? Vierling's been hot. The multi-positional eligibility with third and outfield, definitely helps you out. Plays for those Detroit Tigers, in case I didn't mention that already. But over the last 2 weeks, Vierling's been useful, as I mentioned to you. 6 runs, 1 homer, 4 RBIs, 1 steal, 302 batting average. So Vierling's going to be more if you need a little bit of boost in the batting average department, if you need a little bit of boost in runs as well and average. He's been hitting between first and third in that Detroit lineup. And what? Detroit's sneaky good on a nightly basis with, Riley Green, Torque, Carpenter, who we talked about earlier, even Parker Meadows, Parker Meadows is another guy to look into. Parker Meadows has been hot as well. So Detroit's not as bad as we think they are. So Vierling is somebody you can give a shot. Available almost everywhere at 26% owned. So, go out there and snag him if you need what he brings to the table. Let's move into the starting pitcher portion of this episode, and let's talk about Reed Detmers. The meter is running. The meter's running. I know I brought him up a couple of weeks ago. I was like, hey, you know what? He had a good start against the Dodgers, and there's always a chance that Detmers can go on one of his runs and be useful for a stretch, and it looks like he's about to do it, right? So I mentioned that Dodger start on September 3rd. Detmers 10 strikeouts, a couple of earned runs with an 0.83 whip, kind of almost a repeat performance against the Twins on the 9th. 6 innings for Detmers, picked up the win this time, got 8 strikeouts, gave up a couple of runs with a 117 whip. It really just is with Detmers. It comes in bunches. He can always be a big strikeout machine when his pitches are working. Let's see who that next opponent is. Oh, the White Sox. Actually, this could be interesting. This could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it looks like next week he could be a 2-star pitcher, Reed Detmers, with the White Sox and the Astros. So if you make it that far, and we're praying for all you guys. If you happen to make it that far, if you're locked on with Matt and I, if you join us on the subtext and we get you to next week, Detmers is definitely going to be useful because I really like those two matchups. The softer one against the White Sox, he can go out there and just dominate them. I mean, every time we expect that, it kind of goes backwards, but I think Detmers can be able to handle them. And then Houston, if Altuve's not there, they're not as much of a threat as they normally are. I know Tucker's back, but he has to find his footing as well. So I think that one could be manageable for Detmers. It might not be as good as the first 3, and I'm predicting that White Sox one, but it might not be as good as those, but I think it'll still be at least useful. I don't think it'll blow us up. If anything, it'll get you a bunch of strikeouts. So let's keep things pushing here, and let's move on to our next pitcher. And we're talking Andrew Heaney, right? Andrew Heaney, he's the original Reed Detmers, right? That's so funny. I think that's actually a good comp. He's the original Reed Detmers in the sense of somebody that had all the hype, talent, pitches to get it done and just never really lived up to the hype. Heaney's having a decent year this year. He's had a bunch of decent years in his career. I always thought he was going to be better than this. 28-game starter for the Texas Rangers this year. Andrew Heaney has 5 wins, 3.84 ERA, 120 whip, 145 innings, 149 Ks. And Andrew Heaney is the definition of, at this point in his career, he is who we thought he is. 6 innings in his last one against the Angels, 3 earned, 8 strikeouts, good whip. Before that, on September 3rd, 5 innings against the Yanks, no earned, 8 strikeouts, good whip. Before that, he's just been on a run. He's been on a run. Honestly, it looks like his last 4 starts. Heaney this weekend looks like he goes against Seattle. Seattle's not scaring anybody these days. And he's at Seattle, which is a good park to pitch in. I think it's going to be a big strikeout game. He's been suppressing runs and hits, actually. So Heaney looks good. Heaney's one of my favorite, streamers to add going into the weekend. I think you could add him, and you'll find a lot of success there, especially in that matchup, which is a juicy one against Seattle. With that being said, guys, we got a few more starting pitchers and a closer, but you're going to want to make sure you stay locked on because those names are coming up next. And guys, we're talking Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play 5. Exploring my skills on Prize Picks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 real fast. Prize Picks is incredibly user-friendly. I can make my selections and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, here are some rock-solid picks. You can opt for Ronel Blanco to have higher than 5.5 strikeouts in his next start. You can opt for Brandon Marsh to have higher than 0.5 total hits in his next outing. And you can opt for Bobby Witt Jr. to hit a dinger in his next game. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play 5. Again, use the code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And then you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we all have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market. game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And guys, I think that's one of the best offers that, FanDuel has put out in a while. I mean, who's not watching football? I mean, I want you guys to stay locked on with us for baseball for now, but football is just so much fun to watch with all the excitement, all the ups and downs. And I know a lot of you play fantasy football as well. So I think this is a great offer that you need to take advantage of. And especially, with that $5 off, you definitely want to take advantage of that too while that offer is still standing. It's not going to last forever. So go to FanDuel.com and check that out today. All right, folks, in the home stretch here, and let's move on to a rookie starting pitcher who's been phenomenal. We told you to add him when he got called up, and if you're with us on the Diamond Club, you got that alert right away. I'm talking about Rhett Lauder. Oh, man, I've been impressed. Been impressed with Mr. Rhett Lauder. His first 3 starts here have, as I mentioned, been impressive so far. Rhett Lauder in his young career. It's 15 innings through those 3 starts, 12 strikeouts, a win, an 0.59 ERA, and a 1.24 whip. Probably has deserved a little bit worse results than he's gotten, but you know what? He's been good. He gets those Minnesota Twins on the 15th, which I believe is Sunday. Rhett Lauder is still only 20% owned on Yahoo. Very, very widely available. I will say this. There's chance, Rhett Lauder could get hit around a little bit. As I mentioned, the whip has been elevated in 2 out of his 3 starts. The last one was the good one, though, against the Cardinals, so I do like that. Rhett Lauder has been a very, very successful pitcher down in the minors, so I love to see when pitchers come up and they can continue, that success. Rhett Lauder is actually the number 2 overall prospect in the Cincinnati system. He's 22 years old. I like this. Has a 4-pitch repertoire where he throws all 4 pitches at least 20% of the time, and that's through his first 3 starts in the bigs. Not talking about the minors. Nothing's really getting, hit that crazily. The sliders getting knocked around a little bit, but everything else looks like it's getting pretty solid results as far as Rhett Lauder's 4 pitches. The thing is with Lauder, as all Cincinnati Reds pitchers have to deal with when they pitch at home, they're always a little bit more volatile. But as I mentioned, this one's in Minnesota for Rhett Lauder, so I think the young starting pitcher has had a lot of success so far. So I like this one. I think we're safe to add him for that Minnesota matchup. Honestly, Minnesota's slowed down too. Royce Lewis isn't really hitting as good. Correa has been banged up. They just haven't had the normal bats. Who we worried about? Matt Walner. I'm just messing around. But, I think Rhett Lauder could definitely handle that start, and we could pick him up and feel pretty safe about that one. This next guy, not so sure about the matchup, but I know he's good. It's Jameson Taillon. Jameson Taillon gets the Colorado Rockies this weekend in Coors. So now the thing is, there's not a lot of starting pitchers out there that we can really add and feel at least somewhat comfortable with. Jameson Taillon's 46% owned on Yahoo. His 25 starts this year, he has 10 wins, a 3.57 ERA, a 1.17 whip, 146 innings, 113 strikeouts. We all know Jameson Taillon's talented. He's a good starting pitcher. He's always had it in him. His last 2 starts, he's actually been on a little bit of a revenge tour, right? September 2nd, he went against the Pittsburgh Pirates, got 7 innings, 3 strikeouts, no earned runs, an 0.57 whip. And then his other former team on the 8th, the New York Yankees, 6 innings, a win, 6 strikeouts, 1 earned run, and a 1.17 whip. Before that, Taillon was on a really bad stretch, but it looks like he's course correcting. The Colorado Rockies themselves are not a great team. Sometimes the course field effect, just comes and just throws a monkey wrench into, all of our plans. So that's going to be the tough part. I have Taillon on a couple of my teams, and I think it's gonna kind of come down to if I need stats, right? So I think the start is coming on Saturday. So we kind of should have an idea on our matchups if we need the statistics, right? So I think in a game at Coors, could you get 5-6 innings of 3-run ball with like 5 strikeouts and a solid whip? Maybe they pick up the win because the Cubs are better than the Rockies. Yeah, that's possible, but there's also a world where he goes 2 innings, gives up 5 runs, and looks really bad. I think it's going to be a judgment call for Taillon. If you really need it, go for it. Like I said, I want him in a couple of spots where I'm kind of going to make a judgment call on Saturday, see if I need it. If I need it, I'm going to throw him out there. If I don't, if I'm safe, if I'm looking good and my In weekly league, if my ERA looks good, if my WHIP looks good. In a points league, you run him out there. In points league, I don't think it's a debate. In points leagues, you run Taillon out there this weekend. In category leagues and roto leagues, stuff like that. Look at your weekly statistics in weekly leagues. If you're in a full long league, you're probably just throwing them out there too, unless you need to preserve your ERA and your WHIP. Because it could go sideways in a moment in Coors Field. I do like me some Jameson Taillon, though. Let's move on to potentially the last guy of today. I wanted to mix in a closer there for you in case you had the Ben Joyces of the world and stuff like that. I want to talk about Tyler Kinley of those Colorado Rockies that we were just talking about. Kinley's only 14% owned on Yahoo. The numbers on the year look really, really crooked. But, he's been better over the last week, let's say, right? So I feel like this is going to be more a little bit of a desperation ad for saves. So the last 7 days, though, for Kinley, actually 3 innings pitched, 3 saves, 3 strikeouts, no earned runs, and 0.33 WHIP. So it looks like threes are wild for Mr. Kinley. If you lost Ben Joyce and you really need somebody, Kinley's out there. I think we can make that move. I'm not super comfortable. I'll tell you this, they actually go back to Coors. I talked about that already, playing the Cubs this weekend. Like I said, it's just really going to be a desperation play here with Kinley. He's not somebody I believe in. The ERA is elevated, the WHIP's elevated, but I just wanted to throw out somebody that is getting saves right now. And then even if we go back, a day before the 7 days, which would make it 8 days, that's another save with another 2 strikeouts and another inning pitched and no earned runs and a clean WHIP in that one too for Kinley. So he's been better, right? There's a world where he gets you a couple more saves down the stretch and looks good. But once again, if you're one of those teams that is looking to preserve ERA and WHIP, I might not look Kinley's way. With that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap there, but I wanted to talk to you guys for a few seconds before I head out. Once again, kind of been doing these little talks with you just to kind of give you an idea on what you should be doing this time of year. And it's cut the dead weight, man. I almost dropped the bad word there, but we don't do that around here. So, I refrained. But it's such a big thing that I see with a lot of teams this time of year in the playoffs. They don't realize that they still have players on the team that haven't produced in a month, starting pitchers that haven't been good in 2 months. And then you're struggling, right? You're squirming at the last minute. I've been there. I remember when I, first started playing fantasy baseball and wasn't as tuned and polished as I am now. I would always do that. I would, especially when it comes to playoffs, last couple of months, you get ready for football, you start to tune out a little bit. You start to pay attention to baseball as you're prepping for football, and you don't realize that your team has kind of, started to fall apart, and, you may still be pulling out wins, but it may be awkward wins. So then by the time the playoffs come around, your team isn't looking the way it needs to. And, cut the dead weight, man. It's really time to do it. Just get rid of those guys that aren't doing nothing, especially in a redraft league. If you're not keeping anybody, almost anybody is ready to go at this point. Get them off your team and get in those guys that are producing. Even if it's like, like I mentioned, the Matt Vierlings and the Matt Walners. They may not be the most sexy names, but hey, if they can get you the win for this week, that's all we need this time of year. And I think that's so overlooked. I'll tell you this. I know Matt did the drop-o-meter this week, and I don't know if we talked about him or not, but I'm going to bring up an interesting name, Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes not closing no more for the Yankees. Aaron Boone said, hey, you know what? We're going to mix and match. I dropped Clay Holmes. I dropped Clay Holmes in an important league where I gave up a lot. I traded a lot to get Clay Holmes, at the trade deadline because I needed a closer. And I had to cut him. Did it feel good? Absolutely not. But you know what? After I sat down and made the move and thought about it, it didn't feel good in the moment, but it started to feel good after because he said, you know what? I got a guy off my team that's not producing. I went out there. I got a pitcher that I'm going to stream for, the weekend. And I really think that's the way you got to be this year. You got to be fluid. You got to be like water. You got to be ready to, adapt to your environment. And then always check the team you're playing. Check what they're good at. I say this all the time too. See what that team excelled at during the year in the last few matchups. Know if you can't beat them in a specific category. Maybe you got to punt it to be stronger in another category. And if you guys have any specific questions, for your specific team or a league, join us on Subtext. Link in bio if you're listening or watching. And that's going to be all for today, guys. So thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers and new listeners. And after you make us your first listen, make Sully over at Locked On MLB your second listen. Sully does such a good job breaking down the MLB in a different way than Matt and I do. Matt and I always put our fantasy take on everything. Sully does more of a straightforward type of thing over there, Locked On MLB. So make sure you give him a listen. But guys, until next time, and I hope that all of you make it to your championships. You pull out a win this weekend. Sound off in the comments below if you're approaching, your fantasy baseball championship, and we've helped you at all. If you're gonna get there, if you do get there next week, come on, we love to hear about it, and we love to hear when you guys win. So you know what? With that being said, guys, until next time, I will see you next week, and Matt will be back with us too. So guys, until then, see ya.